the current Illuminati or the original Illuminati? Because there was, the name Illuminati originally came from being illuminated, i.e. aware, awakened of the truths of it. And as happens in all the time, power corrupts. And within that there were a group of people who wanted they had a better vision of the world. And they felt that the only way that they could do that was to control the people. But in doing that, the ultimate power corrupts everything. So they became controlling to the point where they believe that they're right and everyone else is wrong. Now, and they also are very much controlled by the Dracos in terms of their agendas. And they've worked their way through, and they control every government, every major corporation, you name it, it's all controlled, and it all filters back to a handful of families. And it's all to do with the bloodline. So we're talking about the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the JP Morgans, the royal families of Egypt, royal families of Europe. They're all tied into this bloodline. And that bloodline happens to be reptilian. It's a reptilian bloodline. And that's why we're so aware of people like George Bush and the Queen and that being able to shapeshift. People have seen them doing these reptilian shifts and going, whoa, because they're of that bloodline. So they're controlling everything through fear. What's their agenda? Ultimately, their agenda is they want to get into the fifth dimension. But along the way, it's all about just control everything and keep the sheeple as sheeple. Ultimately, the Dracos are at the top of the tree. They've been around in this universe for about 4 or 5 billion years. And because they've been around that long, they think they own this universe. And they go from planet to planet like a locust. You know, they'll go there and they strip it of all of its resources. And if there's a population there, they just infest themselves until they control the population. And then they strip the planet of its resources. So they're like a plague of locusts that go around, and they believe they have a right to do all of this. So they can do whatever they want. And they've genetically engineered the human race as a Trojan horse to try to get into the upper realms. Because they're fear-based and they're reptilian, it's like the reptilian brain we have, which is about pure survival and control and manipulation and all of those things, survival of the fittest and all of that, and lacking in emotion. They don't have emotion. So they can't access higher realms. But because they want to control everything, they think, well, we can't have a dimension in this universe that we can't control. So we have to control it. We have to invade it. We have to do what we do. So that's their agenda. It's not right or wrong. It's just that's their way of thinking. You know, we say when we see a snake attack a rabbit and kill it, the snake's not doing anything evil. It's just doing what a snake does. So the Dracos aren't evil. That's a judgment that people put on them. Okay, they're not evil. They're just doing what they do. And they're fulfilling the role of being the fear-based thing for the third dimension. They're playing out the bad guy that we need to experience stuff in the third dimension. Because if we didn't have that, there would be no third dimension. We'd all be in fifth dimension going, isn't everything wonderful? Their physical form and spiritual form, because they're lower fourth dimensions, which means they can be in third dimension, lower fourth dimension. So they're capable of shape-shifting. So there will be a physical reptilian form, but they will look to you as if they're human. They can also, their consciousness can oversee a physical human form, like a shadow. Okay, so see, we get so locked into thinking that our human body is solid. And science tells us it's not. It's 99.9% space. Okay, but we perceive it solid because of our own filters. So therefore it's quite possible for another entity to exist in the same space that you exist. And if your switches are switched on, then they can control you through those, like a remote control. But if you flick those switches off, they can't control you. In order to switch off the DNA, because within your DNA you've got all sorts of different switches, and it's like a giant airplane cockpit. They're everywhere. You know, some of them are the thrusters, some of them are the navigators, some of them is a fuel gauge to see how much energy you've got. They've all got a purpose. And some of those switches are reptilian, that says, well, we're going to totally control everything through the reptilian switches. So the way to do it is you do a visualization, a meditation, whatever it is you want to do, and you go in there and you physically find those switches and you flick them off. You turn them off. And once they're turned off, they can't activate. If you want to, you can rip the whole wiring out. Whatever you want to do to deactivate that, you can. And then you can look around and you can find the aspects of your higher self. You know, they might be over here glowing in gold, and you flick them on and turn them on full so that you allow yourself to be in a full level of awareness. Because it's all there. You can do whatever you want. It's your cockpit. If we had a whole lot of 9-foot tall reptilians walking around the planet, people would freak out. Okay, so what better way to control the masses than to have an organisation of hybrid forms that appear to be human but are totally controlled by you, or you're part of their running their agenda, and they do all the dirty work for you under the guise of being good. See, we have a United Nations, and the United Nations is a Drakos-run organisation. But if you tell the people they're doing good things and you publicise, and this is where controlling the media helps as well, if you publicise all of the good things that you do here, while at the same time you're totally ripping the shit out of everything down here, people only see that. Because very few people will dig deeper to find out what's really going on. Very few people have dug deep to understand that the AIDS virus and Ebola virus and swine flus and all these things were actually created by these people. And it's documented. It's documented that the World Health Organization, which is an offshoot of the United Nations, they created these viruses for a purpose, to pull the population down. They have an agenda to bring the world population down. But most people don't dig any deeper. They lead superficial lives. People just have to dig around for themselves. You know, go onto YouTube. Take everything with a pinch of salt. You know, don't believe everything that you see, everything you hear, but importantly, don't disbelieve it either. Run it through your own filters. And you know, there's a simple thing. The most simple answer is usually the most appropriate one. So the more that you're seeing bullshit and the more your stuff doesn't seem to add up, go deeper. There'll be a reason behind it, why somebody's trying to hide something. And often it's not what people tell you, it's what they don't tell you. And this is where NASA is brilliant, because NASA, you know, will tell you some things, but then they won't tell you other stuff. So the best thing that people can do is ask questions. Don't believe everything you're told. Find out for yourself. Go onto the internet, go into YouTube, grab some books, read up, become informed through your own processes, and tap into your higher knowledge. Run it through your own filter. Read something and put your hand on your heart and say, does that resonate for me, yes or no? And you'll get an answer straight away. And it might totally contradict logic, but it's your higher self telling you, no, that's not true. That's a cover-up, whatever it is. That's the best way to do it. If you go into Google Earth, you know, and then in Google Earth you can punch in your street directory and it brings up a map, and you can even see a photo. Someone's driven a car and taken photos along all of these streets, so you can actually see your house on Google Earth. It's pretty trippy. This is the level of control that these guys have. They've been able to not only map the Earth by satellite, and they have satellites that can zero in and read a book. If you're sitting in a park, right, reading a book, their technology is so powerful that they can actually read what you're reading. That's how much they can zoom in. Okay? So they've got satellites all around the planet, all the time, looking at what's going on, in all spectrums. So they've been able to create Google Earth as a byproduct. And everyone says, oh, it's great. Yeah, we want these satellites because we've got Google Earth. Well, let's look at all the subversive things that they can do with it. That's what they're not telling you. And who's in control of this? NASA, which is not a government organisation. It's a private organisation, totally funded and owned by the Illuminati. And there are factions within it. There's the Nazis and the CIA, and there's all these different factions in NASA. Because that's exactly the way the reptilian world works. Everyone's fighting to be the leader, the controller. So they have their own little factions in it. In a love-based environment, there is no leader because everyone contributes and they do what is in the best interests of everything. As well as they have Google Earth, if you go to certain places in Google Earth, it's blacked out. Let's say that I've got a zit on my head, right? And I don't want people to see the zit. What do? I cover it up in makeup so you can't see it. So they've got Google Earth, they control all of this. They can say, okay, let's just take those frames out and let's put in some blank Earth. We'll airbrush it. Because we can control that. We can do what we want. But there are other areas that they do black out and you can't see. That's when it becomes interesting when you go to Google Sky. Because Google Sky is with all the satellites that they've put up in the air, they've got all of these images of the whole galaxy. You can see the whole galaxy from there through their satellites in normal spectrum and in infrared spectrum. And that's where it becomes interesting because you've got this section in Virgo which has been censored out by a black square. Sorry, what do they not want us to see? A star? What's in behind the black square that they don't want to see? And in fact, you may have been able to track down through some of the other links that I've got that there's a binary star system behind there. Well, that's no big deal. Why would they block out a binary star system? Because there are other binary star systems. So the only conclusion is, it's not that there's some supernova going on there or something happening on it. The only conclusion that you can come to as to why that section is blacked out is there must be something coming from there that they don't want you to see. Now, it could be an object, and that object could be a natural object like a comet or something like that, which was on a collision course with Earth or something like that. They don't want us to see it. It's not the most likely option. The most likely option is that there's a fleet of ships coming from that area. Oh, we don't want people to know that, because if there was an object like a comet, well, we've got comets coming around all the place, so we wouldn't worry about that. The only reason that you would block out part of the sky would be if there was some sort of alien force or presence coming this way from that star system. Because if you knew that, then you'd start asking all sorts of questions. Best we just black it out. They think most people are stupid, that they don't even know Google Sky exists, and they wouldn't even know to look in that constellation. And they've also got a huge big black band going down through there. So most people would just go, oh, it's obviously some sort of fault or some area that's blacked out or something like that. And it's not really any interest anyway. It's just a star. Most people are just going to fob it off. You're going to have less than 0.01% of the population who are capable of having access to that technology that will be interested. And especially if you keep them too busy with having to pay their bills and where they're going to pay food, or they're not even going to be interested because it's not relevant to them. It doesn't affect their day-to-day life. Perfect example. When an earthquake happens in Chile, everyone goes, oh, that's terrible. And they go back to their day-to-day life because it doesn't personally affect them. Okay? We don't worry about what happens with the neighbours next door because it doesn't personally affect us. We're so disconnected. We're so separate from it. That's why we generate cancers. Because we're so disconnected from who we are that a part of our body can go, whoa, wake up, you're getting out of control. And we're so separated from it, we think it's something that's happened to us rather than the fact that we have manifested it as a wake-up call. All cancer is self-generated. All cancer can be healed by reharmonizing the body with frequency. And the medical profession know this, and they're not telling you. Why? Because who controls the medical profession? The pharmaceutical industry controls the medical profession. And who owns the pharmaceutical industry? Gee, the same guys who are doing all the cyanide gas in Germany. The Nazis. Who's that? Oh, that's the Illuminati. So the Illuminati control the pharmaceuticals, and they control medicine, and they control everything.